So I was watching this program that had economists, global economists, debating about the world's currency and debtors, and it was fascinating to me to learn. I guess I had never figured this out before, that China is the number one creditor in the whole world, and America is the number one debtor in the whole world. And that's alarming, seeing as though right now it seems like our government officials, the higher ups, the powers that be, want to drum up this Cold War rhetoric, like this throwback to the JFK days, like all of the communism is bad and the Red Scares, and it seems really weird, like it's kind of out of nowhere. It all started with the Ukraine issues and the Crimea and all the craziness that was happening over there, and then US getting involved and opposing Russia's stance over Ukraine, which it's a slippery slope when a country starts getting involved with foreign affairs, because on one hand you can argue that it's a really good thing. It's like somebody coming in and stopping a bully from hurting, some weaker kid, right? But on the other hand, it's like, well, you're halfway across the world. Most of us here don't know your politics and what's going on over there to really have a say. So should we be getting involved? It's a dicey game at the least. But it's interesting because if you watch what's going on over there and then you see that China's the number one creditor and we owe them trillions of dollars that we'll not be able to pay back, there is no way that America can pay back all of the trillions of foreign debt that it owes when we're running a military deficit, we're running a capital deficit, and we're running a trade deficit. We owe all of this money to all of these things, and then we still owe our creditors. And all of this because we can't stop with the war industrial complex, that we can't pump money back into the middle class and get an economy flowing again. We have nothing exporting but guns and war. I mean, we don't have the capital, we don't have the gold to back the dollar in order for it to remain a competing currency. This is all stuff that is going to start dissolving the American empire if it doesn't change radically. And honestly, you watch their power plays, you see who they're aligning themselves with, like over in the Arab nations. How come we invaded Iraq over a war on lies and it's never been considered a war crime? There has never been a trial. And why hasn't there been an indictment on President George W. Bush or Donald Rumsfeld or Dick Cheney? Honestly, in my opinion, all three of those men should be going to prison for war crimes. How are we not thinking of this? How are we not looking back at events like 9/11, seeing that it was all a lie and a sham and that our government was behind it, if not involved in it, and prosecuting? It's astonishing to me that Bush still gets to walk around the streets. That's crazy. And I think Abby Martin or Joe Rogan, one of those two, was talking about how he recently did an interview a couple years back, as a couple years back, and he said something to the tune of, "I'm very happy with where my life is and I look forward to the future," or something like that. And that being a quote from a man who helped mastermind some of the most devious plots that this country had ever taken out, to our knowledge. I mean, honestly, the further we get into the future, the more information that will start to be released about the events that had happened and events that are currently happening. And we're going to start to see things in a much different light. I think we're going to start to see some of our old leaders as the enemy. And honestly, that's a scary thought, because we're living in it right now and we're not realizing it. And it's frustrating to be in a country that's so powerful and so vocal and not always agree with it, because when you bring up that stance, when I say I don't agree with it, when the leadership is questioned, blah, 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 A, we've seen throughout history what has happened to those opposing people, and B, there's not enough people in this country doing it. So it almost seems like no one is. I mean, on the outside, I can only imagine, if you're watching this from outside of America, I can only imagine what you think of this country. Our media portrays us as gluttonous, warmongering criminals, honestly, and that's not the vibe I get in this country. I mean, there are those people, but in my mind, they're the minority. Maybe I've lived in extreme liberal cities my whole life, but I did live in small towns before. I don't know. I guess reality is the perception you want to live in, and some people love drowning themselves in misery and war and hate. I don't get it, but it's just interesting watching these patterns, watching where we're supposed to have these trusted, responsible leaders taking care of us, guiding us to a better future, and we've just watched decades of that not happening. And why are they trying to start wars over in other countries? Why is America talking to China about bailing out our banks? Like, why is America acting so self-centered that we have the balls, our government has the audacity to go over to China and ask them to lend us or bail out our banks and our banking system? Like, how dare the Federal Reserve have the balls to do that? Like, the times that we're in right now, the people who are suffering, and the whole world is drowning in debt. I mean, it's not just America, it's not just other first world nations, it's not third world nations, it's the whole world, because this debt, this man-made debt with this man-made paper currency, this fake "in God we trust" added in the 50s or 60s, like, all of this is so fake. We have people dying over currency. We have people fighting over fossil fuels and CO2 producing resources. Like, none of this makes sense. If we're to die, it should be for something out of love and to further our human race. I cannot believe that in 2016 we are still fighting wars over oil. And honestly, I don't even buy all that. I think a lot of the wars have actually been fought over ancient artifacts. I think they've been fought over history, knowledge, truth, education. I think it's been fought to keep the human race slaves, like the 80-90% of us. I really do. I think the people in power are aware of that. However, I don't think they're as all-powerful as we believe. I think they're controlled, and I think the people in charge of them are laughing. And those are the people who we cannot understand how they think, because it's too maniacal, it's too greedy, it's a level of insane egotism and monstrous greed that drives these people to treat humans like slaves. They watch us being murdered, starving, not taking care of each other, starting wars, and they're behind it. They're just watching it. And I believe that to be reality. I do think we're going to find out that is the case in a decade, 2 decades, next year. Who fucking knows? Like, everything's moving so fast. Technology is moving so fast. That's another good point to talk about. If you take how fast technology has moved from the 50s to the 60s, and then the 60s to the 70s, and the 70s to the 80s, and, into the millennium, and the internet blowing up, and now where we're at, with technology moving so fast, it's gotten faster and faster each decade. We're going to get to a point, I believe right now, we're at the fork in the road. And we need to choose, are we going to, as a human race, become smart, take care of each other, and educate ourselves so we can keep up with this machine organism that we created, or that we brought back? Who knows? God knows, right? Who knows who's teaching who, really? But with machines becoming more advanced, with computers being able to work almost as fast as a human brain, once artificial intelligence moves over to intelligence, and machines are their own race, we don't know what would happen. Don't we want to? Don't we want to have a better understanding? There's all this fear-mongering that AI would control and enslave the human race. What if AI would be able to recognize that 90% of humans have been enslaved our whole lives? And what if they'd free us? What if the reason our government is so weary of AI technology is because scientists know that the moment it comes about, it might actually help save humanity rather than enslave it? It might go after the bad human beings. I don't know. All of this is just fun sci-fi / sci reality, whatever you want to look at it as. But it's all honest, and it's all stuff that is okay to think about, and it's all stuff that, God, I wish we would talk about more, and I wish honesty was more revered, and I wish that we respected people like Edward Snowden and people who reveal information that the masses need to know. And I'm tired of hearing from the people who are so scared of their existence. It's like, why do you expect life to be so safe and coddled? We're on a rock, a piece of dust, flying through a vacuum at an insane speed, just being whipped around shit. And you want to be safe and you want to be treated like with respect all the time and making sure that you get tucked in at night with a warm glass of milk. But it's like, that's an illusion. Like, stop. Don't force that on everybody else. We need to learn, and we need to learn some dark things because we as humans have done some dark things. And that's okay to be empathetic over and to understand, let's not go back there. Let's move forward. Let's do something productive, and let's be a proactive race of species that wants to further our existence rather than stunt it or go extinct. I mean, honestly, where are we heading? I mean, if we really want to rely on governments to take care of the people, let's at least make sure there's people in our government that want to take care of the people, that aren't openly on television saying, get rid of all people who aren't white, or make walls around the borders. Like, what? No! That's the opposite of where we need to go. We need to lower borders. We need to expand. We need to merge countries and let people interact and move around the world. That's where humanity's supposed to go. That's how we're going to learn. The internet is connecting us all at the fastest rate we have ever connected that we know of. But God, could you imagine if travel was easier and we could do this in person? Like, come on, what if we could just fly to the next country and it wasn't a country, it was just another land mass, and you got to explore it and talk to people, and nobody was like, hi, I'm from London, and hi, I'm from Sydney, and hi, I'm from Tokyo, but everybody was like, hey, check out this cool place I decided to pitch a tent, and, you know, in 2 decades, 3 decades, we would all be the same skin color. There wouldn't be racism because nobody created race. Like, honestly, we are all one race. We're one color. We're all the same inside. So, okay, apparently I smoked a pound of weed. But with all of that being discussed and thrown on the table, it's all coming back to, what are we as Americans going to do? Do we want to allow our government to speak for us in a way that doesn't represent us? Don't we want to have our voice heard? And don't we want to represent ourselves to other nations around the world, to other people of the world in a better light? Like, we don't want to be seen as these warmongers who are greedy and expect to be paid money just because we live in America. Like, this is insane. So let's kind of take some power back. Let's us as people get talking, get active, and promote good ideas. Let's get discussions going. So leave comments below because I would gladly read them and reply. Also, feel free to make a video or do a shout out or do what YouTube people do, right? Like, reach out. I hope you all decide to continue to stay curious, ask a ton of questions, and if you run into people who tell you you ask too many, find someone else, because you have every right to educate yourself and to make sure you are taking care of yourself and representing yourself in the best way you can, which will further project into us as a society and hopefully as Americans, and we can really change this game on how we look to the rest of the world. Anyway, have a good rest of the day. I will see you tomorrow. Get outside, right? It's gorgeous out today. Peace!